Well, you're here because I'm going to talk about something that maybe the people that are not here this morning don't need to hear. So put on your seatbelts. But I have a joke, but I had a hard time finding a joke about what I'm going to talk about today. But aliens landed on Earth, and they were looking for somebody, to find so that they could get some information. So finally they went to this house, and there was a little boy in the house, and they said, "Listen, little boy, take us to your leader." So the little boy said, "Dad, come quick." And the dad's outside, and he runs inside, and as soon as the dad gets there, he said, "Go get Mom." So there we are in America, right? But anyway, women are rising. But I want you to consider something this morning. You know what? It's all done yesterday because I was going to a party last night. I had a whole sermon done yesterday. I thought I'm so ahead of everything. I sit down this morning to go over it. The whole thing starts switching and all this stuff comes into mind. I push the whole thing to the side and kind of start it over and add a few pages to it because something wants to come forth this morning. So let's see what we go. Could there be, well, let me just ask you this morning, I had a friend named Timothy, and when I was coming out of religion, he always said, "Mary Lou, just consider. Just don't put the facts away, just consider." But could there be an advanced intelligence that's been laying clues to give us confidence to what's going to be happening in our future? Could there be clues like in ancient texts and things that are happening in the world that are really giving us clues that we can see what's coming ahead for our future? And could these clues have been in encoded language? And I still believe this, to be decoded when mankind's consciousness evolved enough to understand and be able to see the codes. And so is there any evidence to suggest that this could be possible? And if so, where would this evidence be? And that's, first let me say that maybe when it would be someplace you never suspect. In a book most people kind of have pushed away, and it's the Bible. And it is full of aliens, and it is full of evidence that has laid clues to where we're going, where all of humankind is going. The one thing I loved about coming out of the Bible, what I found out was there was a code in the Bible. And that's how I began to awaken. There was a scripture in John that said, "Beloved, above all things, know this, that a day with the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day." And so I began, it was like this portal in my mind opened, and I thought, why does it say, and on the 7th day Jesus went to the Mount of Transfiguration, and on the 3rd day he went to the wedding, and it was the Sabbath day and he healed the sick? Because in every one of those days, it's a 1,000-year period that shows us a clue of what's going to be happening on our planet. See, the Bible is a 7,000-year plan. And so every one of those days was telling us what humanity was going to go through. And what I found was almost every single miracle that Yeshua did was on a 3rd or 7th day. He healed the sick. He healed the blind. Hello, blind. That our eyes are being opened. He healed the deaf. Hello, deaf. We have really been deaf and blind to the reality of what life's all about. And it was on those days, and we are living in the 3rd and 7th day. We are in the 7,000 years from when the Bible supposedly began, and we're on the 3rd 1,000 years when Yeshua supposedly was crucified. So we are really a 3rd and 7th day people. We're the most glorious time on the planet. And I was speaking in churches at that time, and they were talking about the tribulation and all these things, and I would come in and start saying, this is the best time to be alive. Everything that we've dreamed of, all the supernatural things are happening in this time. Well, they didn't want to hear that, and they would say, she's into numerology, and we don't believe in numerology. I wasn't received with grace and love, but let's put it that way. I wasn't embraced when I was saying this stuff. Then the next week, even in the church I was going to, he let me speak, and then the next week he'd kind of dilute everything that I said the week before about how great it was and everything. I had this experience, but I'm going to get to that. But anyway, so I'm going to say it's in the Bible from cover to cover. And I want to do the book of Ezekiel sometime, and I'm going to get to that too, because it's all about aliens coming, a wheel within a wheel. It talks about a hand that comes down. Could that be, the landing gear? And it talks about the speed and how it sounds and all of these things. So not only is it in the Bible, but it's in many, many ancient texts, So I want to read a few scriptures to just show you and point you to what we're looking for. So could we be in a time, since we're at the end of that 7,000 years, that we are understanding and decoding this stuff? And I'm going to give you, how many of you know who David Wilcock is? I'm going to give you, I just was reading an article which really spurred me on to this, about David Wilcock and what he's saying about the Bible in this time. You know, he's one of the most people that is exposing aliens. He's talking with Corey Goods, talking about, you know, stations on the back of the moon. I mean, he's way out there. And what he's saying is that the Bible contains all of this stuff. So I just want to give you a few scriptures. In Psalms it says this about these higher ones. I will open my mouth in parables. And a parable is an allegory. It's a story. It's a myth that's going to teach you something that is invisible, something you can't just grab onto. I will open my mouth in parables, and I will utter dark sayings, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. So ancient texts were talking about dark sayings and from ancients that were passed down from father to fathers, like these sayings that they knew something that was passed down. And it was a strange symbolic language of ancient times. And then in Proverbs 1 it says, 6, it says, to understand a proverb and the interpretation are the words of the wise and their dark sayings. So what we were being admonished to do was begin to understand these dark sayings. They were encouraging us to look at these ancient things and begin to understand what is the Bible all about. You know, what we've been taught is going to be thrown out the window. You know, I remember a long time ago, it said, Jesus said this, he said, I will be with you till the end of the world, but the word is really age in Greek. So what was the age of Jesus? Was the age of Pisces. And so we have stepped out of that age where we had this outer Savior. And we've now come into this age of Aquarius where we don't need somebody outside of ourselves anymore. And Jesus plainly said that. He said, yeah, I'm going to baby you. You'll be in kindergarten until the age of Pisces passes. And then you're going to be coming up to that higher place where he said, go find the man with the water pitcher. A parable, a myth. Men in those days did not carry water pitchers. Follow him to the upper room, which is already prepared to you. All about us going to higher consciousness where everything within us that we need is there. So in this age of the water bearer, we're going up to this place of higher consciousness where it's been prepared for us to begin decoding this stuff. How many of you seen Ancient Aliens on television? Oh, yeah. Everybody. I mean, all of my friends, people that aren't even half of where we are talking about it now. We are so close to an exposure, but we're close to something else too. So they were called the wise in the Bible, a mysterious language full of symbolism. Remember the Magi, the only ones that could find the Christ? They were from the West, and they were astrologers and astronomers, just like Reba was talking about last week. And they're the only ones that could recognize and decode the Christ because they had this knowledge. And they were called the wise men, weren't they? So we're seeing, like Reba was saying last week, you know, all of astrology and astronomy is speaking to us. The whole world, everything in the visible world is bringing us a message. Everything that's going on in your life, if you have ears to hear and if you have eyes to see. So, so back in Ezekiel, there's a strange encounter. How many of you ever read the book of Ezekiel in the Bible? Well, let me tell you, it's an amazing book. It's just an amazing book. It talks about a wheel within a wheel, and it talks about going up into heaven and then landing, and there's a strange encounter with a man in a white suit standing by this craft. So it's not going to, I'm not going to go in that today, but one of these days I'm going to do Ezekiel. And it flies and it touches the ground, and out comes these men. Hello? Hello? What do you think that is? You know, we call them angels, we call them all these things. Well, I don't know about that. You talked about Ezekiel, you know, going up and then not coming back. Where'd he go? You know, we read all these things, but now we're beginning to decode these things. We're beginning to see right in a book that we've discredited because it's been so misinterpreted and shoved down our throat that its control are the secrets of the universe. and something that can really give us encouragement for what's ahead for us. So all these kinds of symbolic languages describing what is happening. And could it be a matter of consciousness that we observe UFOs? Even that. Maybe a portal has to open in our minds. Where we, the Indians couldn't see ships. You remember that? When the ships first came, the Indians couldn't recognize them because they'd never seen a ship. But then as our consciousness begins to ascend, could it be a portal and our consciousness begins to open and we begin to consider these things, and then we begin to observe those things with a particular gate opens and our brain to a particular frequency. And that's why it's in the Bible, for us to begin to see these things. The Bible is the same as Greek mythology. That's another thing. When all these myths were created, people lived far away and they were isolated from each other. And the amazing thing is that all of these myths are similar. All the creation stories are very similar, and so are all of the things about what's happening on earth. So the stories are no different. Mythology in the Bible is telling us what's really esoteric mysteries, and it's beginning to reveal. And let me say something else. Television is another mode. When you begin to see those things, remember when psychics were on a while back? And then they had all of these things. Every time you see that, you can see where the consciousness of humanity is. And you know what I've always said about the election, too? People worry about the election. The consciousness, it says God lifts up a leader and God puts him down. The consciousness of humanity is going to draw the leader in that is in balance with the corporate consciousness of our people right now. So recently, there was a movie. It was called 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. Did anybody see that movie? I did too. I usually don't go to movies like that, but my husband wanted to see that movie, but I know why I went to see it. It was really a violent movie, and it's a true movie. It was filmed telling the story of the attack on our citizens in Benghazi on September 11, 2012. And the key to the movie was a quote by Joseph Campbell. Who knows who Joseph Campbell is? He's one of the foremost mythologists in the world. He's not with us anymore, but his work is phenomenal. He decoded so many ancient texts in the Bible and all kinds of things. And this is, here in the Bible, we're watching this movie and I keep putting my hand down, and then this guy is reading this book and I see The Power of Myth, Joseph Campbell. I thought, oh my God, then the guy quotes, and the guy says this: all gods, all devils, and all the heavens are in you. Yeah. Profound. And not only did he say it once in the movie, it was said like 3 or 4 times in the movie. So in the midst of this movie about war, what was the message? The message was that wars, these outer wars, are created from an inner us, from within us. So we're seeing all of this violence, but what we're seeing is it's for us to take responsibility, because everything that we see in our lives is created from where? Inside of you. And we press against it and we fight against it and we say it's the devil's fault, it's their fault, it's everybody else's fault. But what that movie was really telling us, here is something that was so brutal and so wrong, but where was it created from? From the very hearts of humanity. So it was just profound. So in the midst of that movie, it had a powerful, powerful message. And it came from a book called The Power of Myths. Has anybody ever read that? It's a phenomenal book. Absolutely. And today I want to talk about myths and how powerful they are in our lives, which are the ancient existence of man. They are almost in every single culture. They're myths. And when you begin to read them, we talked about how many saviors there were before Jesus that were myths. I think there was like 19 saviors that were born on December 25th, had 12 disciples, walked on water, had communion, died and were resurrected, came for the sins of the world. All those things. 19 before Jesus Christ came on the scene. So it's telling us something. There's one story for humanity. And when we begin to put all these things together, we begin to unravel this mystery of why we're here and what it's all about. So myths are used to explain the unexplainable, to reveal the mystery of life, and to answer questions like, who made the world? Who made the world? How was the world made? We've had all of these things, the Big Bang Theory, all of these things, but who made the world? How will it end? What happens when we die? Why does the sun go around on a daily basis, go across the heavens? Who controls the world? And how do we get in touch with the entities or beings that are controlling the world so we can change our lives? Those are the questions that man has asked for eons, and these are some of the things that myths tell us. Societies all over the world devised creation myths, and they had a system of supernatural beings with specific powers, and they talked about their actions. Angels, we talk about angels and how they came to earth. And another thing is I want to ask you, in the Old Testament, God walked with man. He said in the cool of the day, with Abraham, and talked to Abraham. They went to Sodom and Gomorrah. Where did he go? Have we ever thought about that? Why did God quit talking to man? Where did they go? And that first word in the Bible is Elohim. And it is a plural. Plural gods created. But where did they go? Why did they stop walking on the earth? Why did they stop? Let me tell you, it's time we're waking up. We've talked baby talk. We have talked baby talk. Those Bible stories, when you hear about Noah's flood and the 2x2s and all that, it's baby talk. There's deep, dark sayings within those that can awaken the portals within our minds that we can begin to grasp the bigness of why we're here and the bigness of what mankind is all about. So these stories about their action, but here's the amazing thing, even though people were isolated from each other, the myths are surprisingly similar, especially the creation myths and what's going to happen in the end time. So the myths are universal and they have power because from the earliest onset of humanity, when man came upon this earth, myths came with them. Where did they come from? And that's what I want to just jiggle you a little bit today to begin thinking. Here they were separated all over the globe, and these myths all correspond. Why was that? What was the intelligence behind all of these myths that was telling the same story over and over and over again to humanity? And we're just now evolving enough to really have the consciousness to decode some of these myths. Even in the Greek mythology, there was an inner myth and an outer myth. And most of the public knew the outer myth, just like most of the public knows the Bible study. We all knew the story of Noah. We all watched the Ten Commandments. We all knew those stories. But the initiates were the ones that knew the inner mysteries. They knew that all of that took them inside and began to show them who they were themselves. So myths were informed. So a superior intelligence that had a cosmic understanding and had the ability to travel our whole globe had to be the originators of these myths. So have we ever considered that? Have we ever, begin to see that our planet is like 4.5 billion years old. And if we think nobody was ever on this planet, I remember in Christianity, they want to say the earth was 7,000 years old. God created the earth when Genesis started. Well, they had artifacts, that were billions of years old, but here we were following a sheep, But that's it. If we don't understand that a lot has gone on this planet, and it's time for us to grow up. It said, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. But when I became a man, I began to change my language and begin to speak as a man. And that's where we are right now. We are in a new phase of humanity right now, where it's time for us to really wake up. And could these myths contain esoteric information that's going to awaken our world? I have said the Bible is a book of mythology, of allegories. And I've had an experience, and I've talked about this. When I was still in Christianity, I was beginning to wake up. I was sitting in a chair in my den, and I saw myself outside, and I was looking at myself. And the Bible, the pages of the Bible were flipping, and Spirit said to me, "You are the book." And I said, "I am the book." What I found out was Genesis is the ascension, my personal ascension, from lower energy to higher energy. And it's also the collective ascension of humanity. I was Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Christ, all of them. Remember, Christ was walking with the disciples on the road to Emmaus, and they didn't recognize him, because I think he took on anybody he wanted once he laid his body down. And so he's talking and telling them, they're telling him all about the crucifixion. And then he took them back to Genesis and walked and showed them how he was every character in the whole Bible. and so are you. That Bible is all about consciousness. It's about genetic engineering. It's about astrotheology. It's about how we can realize who we are. And we are really beginning to wake up to that. So I want to say a quote, and I've said this before about what David Wilcock said, but I read another article. He just released a book called The Ascension Mystery. And here's what he said. The Bible holds profound mysteries not yet fully understood. And one of the things I've read recently is, and I think I've told you this before, science is just catching up to be able to understand what the Bible's even saying. You know, when they split the atom and took Eve, it wasn't Eve till they left the garden. They took a womb man. That was the splitting of the atom. That was genetic engineering. Do you think that there was a Garden of Eden? No. I hate to burst your bubble. I don't think there was ever a garden. It's all about levels of consciousness. And do you think there was a snake in a tree that was talking to him? No, there wasn't a snake in a tree. That's your DNA, you know, and it's all, once we couldn't have seen that until scientists saw the DNA and saw how it wound around. And the Bible would say, men are as trees walking. It interprets itself, but we're beginning to see there is so much more in there. And he said, by simply reading these four books of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it became clear to him that there are many, many references being constantly given. Now listen to this, because this is really what his book's about. Of a massive celestial event in our imminent future. A massive celestial event in our imminent future of a profound personal and spiritual effect that will affect our world like nothing else. And you know, I was looking through the Bible. There is so much evidence to that. And I'm going to give you some scriptures that I was thinking about. He believes it's going to be a national cosmic evolution, a natural evolutionary leap built into the design of the universe, intended that we don't get stuck in this negativity so long. And have you ever wondered, how are all these people going to ascend? Even us, we still have that, you know, inside of us that we're working on ourselves. How is this going to happen? And he is really looking into this, and he has a friend that's in the Vatican. I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. But he also said the same information we found in many other ancient texts. And that the library, now listen to this, the Library of Alexander was not all burnt, but was relocated to the Vatican, to the library in the Vatican. And he has a friend who has touched this material, and guess what? The books of Mark, some of the books like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are word for word like the New Testament King James Version, but they are 8,000 to 10,000 years old. Much older than the Bible. And I've told you about the emerald texts. You know, the emerald texts have all of the Bible, and they are thousands of years older. Listen, we're waking up. There's a bigger story going on, and you're the ones that are getting the information first. We're the ones that our consciousness has evolved enough that we can start decoding some of this stuff instead of, you know, staying in kindergarten. How many of us want to keep coloring in coloring books? Or do we want to stand up and be the change of the world and really know what's going on in this universe? We're connected to everything. And we're the ones, when you start studying this stuff, it's like, I just get on fire. And that the books, I said, they're almost word for word, but they're 8,000 to 10,000. So who wrote the Bible? CNN wasn't back there 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, you know, writing it all down for us. So who wrote it? And how did these myths all come? That's where I want to bring in mythology. Who told these people all these myths? You know, who even brought in about angels coming and, you know, God's talking to people and all of that stuff? Where did it come from? That the gods were walking in the gardens with them and doing all these things. These documents are vastly older and than the lost civilizations of Atlantis. How about that? Older. Those books, they go verbatim from the King James Version of the Bible, are older than Atlantis. I mean, these are things that are boggling our brains right now. You know, I remember when I first started doing this, you know, I had the television show and I did a lot of Bible scriptures and everything, but then I began to wake up and I had all these New Age friends and everything, and I mentioned Bible, and the shade would go, and that was the end of me. They weren't interested one bit. And I thought, why did I waste all those years? Because I can see on the page where the scripture is in my mind many times. But I know. Because there is a decoding that's going to happen in these days that we're beginning to see. When I do the book of Ezekiel, it's not going to be Bible. It's going to be ancient things that you're going to see, the truth of aliens, the truth of it'll blow ancient aliens out of the water, because this is 10,000-year-old information. But anyway, some of these documents were holographic and they were made of indestructible material. This is all information from David Wilcock. They are books that trace themselves all the way back to ancient civilizations, including, listen to this, refugees whose home planets were destroyed and they migrated here to our earth. Hello. You know what it says in the Bible? It says, be careful because you could be entertaining an angel unaware. What does that mean? How about an alien unaware? How about somebody that really has that knowledge? There is so much that in there. I said an insider friend of his, David Wilcox, handled these firsthand. And even more interestingly, he said they are almost, like I said, word for word from the King James. So what does all this mean? Could these myths in the Bible hold a timeless information for us that's just getting ready for somebody like David Wilcock to be interested right now, to be decoding these things right now, to have a book out about this ascension right now? It's a profound thing. And he says, when I first started getting this, people going, oh, you're going to Jesus freak and all of this. And he said, that's not it. He said, this book goes way beyond any of that. So, and could these books be seeded with the coming events for your time and my time? Could they hold the answer to your future? What's going to happen? Who knows what's going to happen? We talk about this reset. I think Alan was talking about a financial reset. We talk about all these things. But could there be a cosmic event that's going to change this world forever? That's going to make our consciousness... it made me think about the butterfly when I was reading this. They can't understand. The butterfly takes a quantum leap. Scientists don't understand it. Because a caterpillar is not a butterfly with wings. The whole DNA is changed. So something could happen to change our very, very DNA. And I saw years ago that blood is the life of the flesh in the body. Our blood can tell everything about your physical body, everything. But in the Bible it says never drink the blood, and when you were bleeding, a woman was bleeding, it was called her time of separation. You couldn't go into the tabernacle. So could it be that this event is going to dry this blood up and we are going to become light? Like on the Mount of Transfiguration, which just happened to be on the 7th day, when Jesus took them up to the Mount of Transfiguration and a cosmic event happened and they all turned into light. But the people at the bottom of the mountain didn't. There is so much to consider. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. So could this be revealing a very powerful spiritual event that's going to take place within our planet in the near future? Here's another quote from David Wilcock. What if the Bible is about to become far, far more significant and relevant to our immediate present than anyone could have ever possibly realized? What if? What if in that book it has all the information we needed, but it's just been coded? And our consciousness had to raise to the point that we could begin to decode it. I know because I saw that code of 3 and 7. And then I began to see a code of colors. And then I began to see even the chapter and the verse were numerology and were revealing something. I began to see that book was a coded book that had information. And nobody taught me that. It's just something that happened. And could it hold the esoteric mysteries of life, which have always been there, but only the initiates of the mystery have awakened to them? So as I awakened, I began to recognize much that it wasn't about people. When I had that experience, you wrote the book, I thought, this book is not about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all that. It's not about events that really happen. This is a book of mythology for each and every one of us to awaken to who we are. That all of the things that each disciple went through is what we are. It's the things that we're going through. It's so profound. But myths and stories revealing deep mysteries of who I was. And many of the myths show us or reveal at the bottom of the abyss. Now listen to this. This is just wonderful because I'm going to tell you something. And I've used this scripture before. But one of the main things that this book reveals at the bottom of the abyss, the lowest point in your life. How many of you think of Eckhart Tolle? The lowest time in his life, what happened to him? Words of salvation or wholeness came to him. And that's what this book says. At the bottom of the abyss, the lowest point in your life, comes a voice of wholeness. The blackest moment is the moment when the real message of transformation is going to come. At the darkest moment in our history will come light. And where are we right now? Probably globally. The darkest point in our history right now, globally. But what this book says is that darkest moment is when the light is coming. What a message for all of us. And I want you to hear it out of the Bible. In Isaiah 60, it says this. Listen. Arise and shine, for your light is come. And the glory of divine presence is risen within, it says upon, but within you. For behold, darkness shall cover the whole earth, and gross darkness the people. But the source energy will rise within you, illuminate you, and illumination shall be and see you. All those Gentiles, unenlightened people, shall come to your light. And kings are those in powerful positions to the brightness of your rising or ascension. Lift up your eyes. They all gather together. In other words, in the midst of this darkness is going to be a people that begins to come together, support one another, awaken to their oneness, take down competition. Their whole purpose is going to be to come and let that light arise within them at the darkest abyss time in the history of humanity. And we are seeing that. You are here to experience that. In other words, in the midst of this perceived darkness, there's a oneness arising no matter what it looks like. You know, it looks like people talk. I mean, I have people around me all the time. Somebody very personal lives in my house. It's always talking about what's going on in the world. And I go, but I have to see past all that stuff. It doesn't matter what I'm seeing in my eyes. The darker the world gets, the more I know we're getting towards the light, because it's darkest before the dawn. Woo. And so it doesn't matter. And we got the answers. And this book, which I go back to, has the answers. And so do a lot of other ancient myths. If we can decode them and begin to see, we're not lost. There's answers for us, and there's ways we can see what's happening in the future. And this book tells us, and then shall you see us flow together, humanity and oneness, and you shall be in awe and enlarged, because the abundance of humanity shall be converted, transformed like you have been transformed. And the focus of the enlightened shall bend unto you. This is what's going to happen in the future. We win. It's going to be good. I don't care how dark it looks. The light within us, the more it is, that darkness, just like a diamond, the more it presses us, the more we're becoming that light. And this is, this morning, I put the whole darn other thing away, and I started writing, and I thought, I was so excited by the time I quit. I thought, you know what? Can we, that cry of Jesus, if they have eyes to see. And that's what I'm crying out today for all me and you and all of us. All this stuff that we get so entangled in, it doesn't matter. Our heart should be on really being this light to accompany. We're in the darkest time of history, and we're over here playing the fiddle like, what's his name, when Rome burned. We're playing all these silly things instead of getting our mind on where it should and meditating, being still, putting the kingdom first in our life. You're here on an assignment. You're an ambassador from another plane of existence, from another dimension, and you've come here to make a change in the world. And if you don't do it, and I'm going to read it, it's all your choice. Let me hear you. In June 2002, David Wilcox posted his first complete article detailing this positive event and their timeline. And listen to this quote. "We believe the earth today is on the verge of a critical transformation in both physical form and energy body. A shift has been long production throughout the world. On the verge of a critical transformation." A seventh-day event, and I said, that's what happened on the Mount of Transfiguration on the seventh day. It was a transformation. "We believe humanity is at the end of a major cycle of human soul evolution, and that we now stand before a radically new phase of planetary life, literally a resonance of civilization." And he calls it spontaneous ascension, a quantum leap in consciousness. In a moment, this is another verse I was thinking of, and I thought of so much. What in a moment? This is a Bible verse. In a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, corruption shall put on incorruption. Mortality shall put on immortality. What is that talking about? It's talking about a cosmic, a critical event that's going to happen in a moment, in a twinkling. It's like a twinkling is like a jerk of the head. In that moment, it's what's going to happen. Thank you, Cheryl. In just that moment, could this be pointing to such an event? Could that scripture in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, and the trump is within us, it's a clear sounding noise. A clear sounding noise. It's not something, we used to visualize angels going around blowing the trumpets in the heaven. Sorry, ain't gonna happen. It's something inside of you. It's a clear message of who you are. And in that moment, when you're in harmony with who you are, mortality is going to put on immortality. Corruption is going to put on incorruption. In a twinkling of an eye. And so many scriptures point to this event. The third day, the stone of darkness was rolled away. When Christ was in the tomb, that was a third day event, and that he was in like the womb of a transformation, and the stone of our consciousness rolled